Okay, hey, welcome to this week's episode of KUDEN Radio. Dashi Miller here from Warrior Concepts. Got James in the wings as usual. So, let's go ahead and just dive into things, shall we? All right. So, when I first started training in needed to, right, I had a serious problem. Not that we don't always, right? But anyway, what I mean by that is based on prior martial arts training and um, I don't know. I was not. I mean, I ran around and played and hung out with kids in the neighborhood and all that kind of stuff as I was growing up. So I was always active, but I was never in like sports, right? So martial arts was my first thing. And the one I tended to gravitate, well, not tended to, it was a part of a extracurricular uh, club uh, in my junior high school. Very, very hard style, right? So when I came to this art, I was just way too stiff, right? Every movement was tight, was locked in, full of tension. So again, coming from this other martial art, I thought power meant force, right? That every move had to be strong to be effective. And let me tell you, it worked against me more than it ever worked for me. And it wasn't just physically, right? It wasn't just that kind of training. As a matter of fact, one of my teachers, my first teacher in this art, taught me a really, really important lesson. Um, just at this one seminar that I was at, because he kept reminding me, relax, relax, relax. And looking back on it now, I just can't imagine how like robot looking I must have been. But I remember him coming by. I was training with my training partner, and he came by on this side, and he just kind of puts his hand on my shoulder, just very, very light, and he said, "Relax." And I remember just like kind of looking over and going, "I know." And he goes, "Oh," and he just patted me on the shoulder. He goes, "Okay." And he walked away. And that was Friday evening of a 2.5 day seminar. And I got no other critique for the rest of that weekend because I learned very quickly, especially if the teacher is being, I don't know, closer to the lineage, that if the student says "I know," or if they act like they already know, well, then the teacher has no reason to teach them anything. They already know. Okay, so I learned very quickly in this art that the teachers aren't argumentative. They just smile at you and go, "Okay." So anyway, right, little segue there, but as I started to loosen up, right, and again, I continued to work with that. I finally got this in my thick skull, right? This relaxed, uh, this relaxation, right? Relax, relax, relax. And so the more I did that, then I ran into the opposite problem, right? Which is being too relaxed. Oh, come on, Sensei. Nobody ever talks about being too relaxed. Maybe that's true, right? But um, it actually got me injured. Okay, so there was this one time in class, we had just started using these open finger. I call them open finger sparring gloves. Sometimes they're called tiger claws, or whatever. But they've got all this padding out on the back side, and then these holes that you put your fingers through. They're not like the saps or the bag gloves and whatnot. They've got a lot more padding back here, but they varied away from the typical karate glove, right? Where you put it in there and it just kind of wraps around. You grab things and it only works as a fist. It's very difficult to grab wearing these things, right? So they came out with these other ones, a little bit of padding across the palm. So if you did a palm strike or whatever, it's supposed to hurt or save the other guy. Anyway, but the holes for the fingers, right? For those of you on audio only, you can't see this. I'm kind of making an L or a pike position with my hand. My palm is vertical and my fingers are out laterally. So instead of the fingers, the holes pointing straight forward, like bagged gloves tend to be, they point out straight to the side. Okay. And so the problem was that I was so relaxed that I allowed the gloves to dictate the position of my fingers. Okay. And uh, long story short, my partner threw a punch. I got out of the way in Kamai, but his foot caught my finger. Right? It caught the middle knuckle of my index finger, and what it ended up doing was punching that little section of bone right back into the metacarpal of the hand, right behind it, and it split that bone diagonally lengthwise. Right, so I ended up having this bulge, the palm of my hand, right, almost a compound fracture, right, a little bit more pressure, and it would have just driven it through. But the point is here, I ended up with this broken hand, right, because I I was too relaxed. Right, a couple of other incidents along the way before again things got into this thick skull. But that's when I really started to understand the real lesson. Okay. And the real lesson is finding the balance between relaxation and tension, between softness and structure. Okay. And so um, the, the, the gist is that balance isn't just physical, right? Uh, Between the, little discourse I had there with my teacher, well, he said something, I said something, and then he didn't say anything for the rest of the weekend. He did as I was leaving, and he asked me if I learned anything. So took me a while to get over the excuse me, I pay you, you're supposed to teach me attitude, right? That a lot of Westerners come at this with. But anyway, again, balance isn't just physical, right? It's mental, it's emotional, it's even strategic, right? We can talk about balance across a whole bunch of lines. That's not my focus for tonight. But again, finding balance is important because when you're too stiff, you waste energy. When you're too relaxed, you collapse or you get collapsed, right? And when you don't know where that line is, you get hurt. Or since we're talking about survival and self-protection, could be worse, right? So this is something Hatsumi Sensei drilled into us over and over again, right? In his own way. And one time I remember him saying something that stuck with me for today, right? So I was going to say stuck with me for years, but yeah, here we are, right? So what he said was, being too stiff is the same as being dead, but being too relaxed is also a form of death. True movement is born between these two, right? And that's exactly what we're going to dive into during this episode, right? This balance between tension and relaxation, and why understanding it, right? Why understanding it is the key to not just movement, but to survival itself. Okay. So let's go ahead and get into it, and I'll talk to you again when I get back. So, the big question is this: how are self-defense and success-minded people like us, concerned citizens worried about protecting ourselves, our loved ones, and the things we care about from the monsters we know exist in the world? How do we train in a way that gives us the skills, knowledge, and understanding we need without becoming paranoid fighters or killers ourselves, and yet still allows us to be the hero protector the world needs us to be? That's the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Jeffrey Miller, and welcome to KUDEN Radio. Okay, let's see. All right, welcome back. All right, so like I said, Daisha Miller here as usual, our 8 p.m. Monday evenings. So again, James is in the wings. James, let's go ahead and I don't know, change the order of things tonight. So who do we have on at the moment? That's our like early adopters, early. You know what they say in Japan, right? To be early is to be on time. To be on time is to be late, and to be late, well, that's to be fired, or to be shunned. They're really good at doing that too. Anyway, who do we have?
As of right now, Jared's the only one that's checked in.
Okay, I see numbers going up, going down. All right. So again, we're taking a look at this idea of the overall theme is energy conservation. But this was really born of a thought that I had over the weekend. I was trying to think about what the theme would be for this week. because those of you who are regular listeners, then you know that for quite a bit, right, even before the new year, I decided that instead of jumping around and having a topic for KUDEN and a topic for Whiteboard Wednesday and then lesson or techniques or whatever that we were working on for the Friday masterclass, I would tie everything together, right, and kind of help students uh, stay with a theme long enough so they can see it from different angles. And I think people are liking it, digging it, whatever vernacular you like. Anyway, so what I got to thinking about was a reference that one of my teachers made a bunch of years ago. Once we got a bunch of us, that we got the gist of the relaxed energy kind of thing. But there were some folks that, there's a line in The Princess Bride. I know it's a chick flick, but like I'm surrounded by women in my family between my wife and a bunch of daughters. And there's a line in this movie, this villain or semi-villain, whatever, he dies halfway. He keeps using this word, right? He keeps using this word. And the word, it doesn't matter at the moment, but this other person looks at him and says, I don't think that means what you think it means. Right. And this is one of those moments, okay? Because my teacher was demonstrating this thing, right? And he was talking about this disconnect that we can be getting in our own way, and we don't know that we're even doing it, right? We could be slowing ourselves down and not even know that we're doing it, right? So I'll talk about that in a minute. But what he was doing was he was demonstrating like Ichimonji, or the Seigan no Kamae basic position. And what he was doing was he was showing what to relax looked like, right? And so things like, instead of the fingers of the lead hand either being pressed together and it's like a spear, or more correctly Seigan wise, it's like a shuto, right? And it's cupped, right, and positioned this way. I know for those of you that are audio only, if you're not in Bujinkan Nijutsu, not familiar with Budo Taijutsu, Nippo Taijutsu, you might have to do some Google searches on some words. But what he was doing was kind of letting the fingers open. So that's how I got a finger kicked and a hand broken. Okay, because not only did they come out of the gloves sideways and I was relaxed and let the gloves form my hand, but everything was not intentionally placed, right? And so he was making a reference to, he said, everybody gets the idea between stiffness and relaxation, right? Relaxed, but what we're talking about is relaxed energy. And there's a definition to that. And I'll share that in a minute as well. But there's a huge difference between relaxed energy as we're defining it, right? There's a balance. There's a very correct and right way to do it. There's a difference between relaxed energy and dead energy. Okay. And again, these are some things that we're going to get into. I just need to make sure I bring my notes up here so I don't get lost. But this was another one of those moments where he used, again, another one of these lines that a teacher used again and again and again that I can't get out of my head. And now my students can't get out of their head. Well, I don't know if they can get out of their head, but they certainly remember it every time I say it, because it happens a lot. Okay. And that is to never be an accomplice to your own ass kicking. Okay. So the nice title is Energy Conservation, right? And striking this balance between tension and relaxation, but that's kind of boring, right? So, but the gist of this, and most of the training that we do, whether it's KUDEN or it's Whiteboard Wednesday or whatever, is this idea of not being an accomplice to your own ass kicking. Okay? And the lessons come across in different words and different ways from different teachers, but this is my favorite because he was a former Marine. And anyway, so the gist of the lesson is that most people don't realize just how much time and energy they waste until it's too late. And I know we could be talking about this in a personal development, life way, relationships. You don't know what you have until you lose it, whatever, right? I'm not talking about that. Okay. Um, I'm talking about time and energy. Okay? Because in a fight, right, in a survival situation, in a self-defense survival situation. Again, I know I keep adding extra words, but uh, some folks can't get the difference out of their head between fighting and self-defense. So, but even in life, right? Every fraction of a second, every movement, right? Every drop or ounce of energy counts. Okay? We're like batteries, right? And we have a finite amount, right? And there's a whole science behind it, right? Glycogen, a type of sugar, stores in your muscles, and how quickly your body can switch from burning sugar to burning fat as you're doing duration kind of things. Energy spikes and troughs in exertion kind of things. Um, it all counts, right? And so the question then is why do most people make the same critical mistake over and over again? The short answer is, and again, based on my own experience coming up through the ranks, and being a teacher for 2-3 decades now, um, we don't know any better. We don't know we're doing it right. We're doing the best we can with what we have, but until we get a new lesson, or until the teacher shines a light on something that we didn't even know was possible, or we didn't even know we were doing, um, it's going to be kind of difficult to figure things out. And when I say, um, every fraction of a second, right, counts, that's really what we're doing, right? Instead of fighting like everyone else and trying to come up with some trick that's going to catch him off guard or whatever. And not that we can't, but often success comes down to just getting the shot off first. Okay. It's one of the reasons why I've integrated the principles and concepts of sword drawing and target acquisition with the Boshi to my training that I do with students with handgun. Okay. Because we're still drawing something out of a holster. Just one's called a scabbard, the other one's called a holster, or out of a sheath, right? And so not only do we have to get the weapon out, so we have to make it, we'll call it naked, right? But we have to get the working end on the target as quickly as possible. Okay? And so there's that kind of integration. And so trying to do things conventionally, speed wise, can only take you so far. And it can leave you at the mercy of nature. Okay. And what I mean by that is like animal like nature, conventional like nature, predictable nature. Okay. And what I mean by that is that, if I'm going as fast as I can, but the other person, right, that is drawing down on me, or, we're in a competition. I used to do international pistol competitions when I was in the military. But if we're doing muscle contraction and things like that to do it, we're using the same muscles somebody else is and whatnot. Then we're kind of stuck with what we have, right? We can't go any faster than we can go. And so if the other person has longer fast twitch muscles, we have fast twitch and we have slow twitch muscles. And so if they have that, or their length ratio between one system and another, right? Upper arm, lower arm, their holster is riding just a little bit lower. You'll see for combat things, now the military, instead of having the holsters way up at the hip, like we had them when I was in, they're now down strapped to the leg, like, the old cowboy stuff, because you can get the weapon out faster with less arm movement. So if he has his weapon there, whatever, right? We're kind of at the whim of those, unless we do it a different way, right? And so, I picked up this little method from these guys that are quick draw artists. They do competitions and all kinds of shows and whatnot, but they're like, the old cowboys and stuff, and no trick holsters or anything. Those things are exactly where they are. And I started picking up on the fact that the guy who was a quarter to half a second, I think it was about a quarter of a second faster than everybody else, right? The guy in the number one position wasn't drawing the weapon the same way everybody else was, right? He wasn't pulling the weapon up out of the holster and then swinging his forearm up into position to get the muzzle online, right? He was drawing the weapon by sinking at the knees and dropping the holster off the weapon and then pushing his elbow down in alignment with his with his ribs, right? And so it levered it up, and he was able to get the first shot off, again, give or take about a quarter of a second before everybody else, and then he's able to keep acquiring the target all the way out to an extended full on shooting posture, right? As opposed to swinging the muzzle up and then not being able to get the first round off until you're almost in that posture, right? So it's little things like that, right? And I was introduced to this idea a long time ago. The teacher would talk about, moving to a certain distance, right, where your flesh is actually being touched, but your bone structure and your brain's not being jarred around, right? You have about an eighth to a quarter of an inch buffer there, right, based on the thickness of lips or whatever, where you're getting bumped, but you're not getting broken, right? And he said that right there's life, right? Could be that thin, right? Getting the punch off, getting it to land, right, that much sooner than his, right? But we're supposed to have all this relaxed energy, right? Relaxed and natural and those kind of things. So how do we work this stuff out, right? Because what most students find, what I found, was that the faster you go and the more intent you are with getting that, that strike out there or that weapon into place or whatever, the stiffer things get, because the more muscle contraction we're trying to fire. Okay? So again, one of the problems that we often run into is the same thing that catches everybody else. Right? If you notice, there's all these martial arts styles, but when it comes right down to it, right, it's punching, kicking, grabbing. There's little nuances for doing things, and when people go looking for training, right, they can use all kinds of descriptions and explanations and whatnot, but when you watch what people are doing, they go through an entire system, and then when it comes to sparring or actual fighting, self-defense or whatever, right, they've like dropped 95% of all of that, okay, for I don't know what. But once they drop all that and it pairs down, or you get someone that goes to they may start out knowing all this stuff and trying to do it, but once they go to some competitions, right, or whether they watch or they participate, what ends up happening is they start borrowing ideas from other people, or they fall into a rhythm or a groupthink, right? So what it ends up being is we want to do it like everybody else, but faster. We want to do it like everybody else, but better, right? It's kind of zero-sum game, right? But again, it really comes down to I believe, not really being able to get our head around what's being conveyed. Okay? So hopefully I'll poke at things enough through this, and then if you stick around for the rest of the week and you do Whiteboard Wednesday, where we convert things more to the physical realm, hopefully by Friday it'll pan out, or when you put it back in your own training. Okay, but either way, I'm gonna cover a broad spectrum of things during this class that hopefully will allow us to get to what it is that we're looking at in words, because again, another training where I'm not the dancing monkey. Okay, so during this episode, we're going to be exploring insights from ninjutsu and the related lineages, right, on the optimal use of energy. And again, I'm not necessarily going to be citing from this lineage or that lineage or whatever, because ultimately it doesn't matter. Right? These were people that had to live and die based on their understanding and application of battle-worn ideas or discoveries. Okay, they didn't have the benefit of the do-over or the request of a rematch. So we're also going to be highlighting the contrast between relaxed, efficient energy and, again, what that teacher, my one teacher, called dead energy, okay, where insufficient tension prevents effectiveness. Okay. So we're also going to be establishing that relaxed and simple does not mean lazy or even easy to understand. Okay? Rather, it's a strategic balance, okay, between effort and ease, right? Which, based on the way we've grown up, and the amount of body awareness we have, what we've been doing training wise up to this point, right? For some of us, it may take a little bit to not just understand it, but to even know what it is that we're looking for, feeling for, looking at. Right? I don't know, maybe you've had this experience as well. I know a lot of my students do. I know I continue to have them, where you've heard your teacher say the same thing over and over and over again, maybe in different phrases, different words or whatever. And, you nod, right? Yeah, okay, I got it. I understand it. And you think you're doing it, right? And then all of a sudden, one day in a class, in the middle of a technique with a partner, all of a sudden it clicks. And like, you didn't try to do what you did, but all of a sudden you have this, everything clicks into place, right? And then you try to duplicate it and whatnot, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. I always leave students with this reminder that, see, okay, I know it was a short-lived win, but now you know what it feels like. Up to this point, up to that point where you had that aha moment, you thought you understood what it's supposed to feel like. And so you were trying to duplicate that. You were trying to simulate that. You were trying to imitate that with your body, but you're guessing at it. Okay? When it actually happens, it's kind of like, you've got infatuation and lust and all kinds of things. But when you actually feel love, you feel that connection, you get it, right? So it's that same kind of thing, right? So now we know what to look for. Before, we thought we understood what the teacher was conveying, but without that experience, we're guessing. Okay. And so these are the three goals, right? And we're going to be jumping around through a couple of different reference points here, nature, all kinds of things. Okay. But again, it's going to be kind of like a pendulum. We need to swing back and forth, and hopefully we we find what we're looking for. It's going to be difficult to do it here in this context, but hopefully by describing it a different way and maybe hitting on some phrases, terms, word orders, whatever, that maybe the teacher you have or teachers that you had didn't use, and maybe one of these things will land. Okay. So before I jump into this next part here, James, anybody else jump on? Anybody questions? Anybody say that, yeah, I could relate to those little moments?
No questions or comments yet, but Meryl and Dave both said good evening.
Oh, cool. All right. Oh, talk too much for a living. My throat keeps drying out. All right. So back to notes. Okay. So let's do this. Let's kind of we'll focus in on this balancing. Okay, balancing relaxation and tension. Okay, so most new students, right? One of the reasons why, and I learned this a long time ago, that one of the reasons why students are not immediately introduced to this idea of a balance between tension and relaxation is because, and I didn't understand this until I had a couple of years, decade or two, right, of students coming to the dojo and realizing that most students come in with too much stiffness and excessive effort. Right? And it could be anything from they're just athletic, or it could be from anxiety where they don't want to fail, right? And so there's this natural tendency to tense up, right? We even say that we tense up, right? Or it could be a fear of failure. It could be like a lot of us, right? They come to this art, they come to my dojo after having had some prior martial arts training, right, in other areas, right? Good example today, right? I mean, I've had him around for about 6 months or so, but one student just since he was 12, right? And now he's Alan. I don't want to tell your age or anything. So let's just say he's not my age, okay, but he's not too far behind me. Okay, so anyway, it's been doing the same type of martial art. Okay, not always the same style, clan, denomination, but very, very hardcore, very powerful. So, like when I see him take Kamae, he's getting better, always getting better, every day getting better. But still, when I see him take Kamae, like it hurts me, like physically, to see that much exertion, that much energy being bled off. Okay, but he's been doing that since he was 12. So, we're talking decades of wiring the muscles to do this thing. And there's all of these we've been talking about conditioning and programming and whatnot. A lot is indirect, unintentional. We're just in the same environment as somebody who's a whiner, somebody who has long since given up on their dreams, or whatever, right? In this case, I believe it would have been very direct because the teacher would have been, this art, right? Be powerful, right? You want to win, right? You want to, okay? And it shows, right? So, but here's the thing. Well, you know what? We'll split this up, okay? So again, too much stiffness, too much excessive effort leads to wasted energy. We're literally bleeding it off, right? We're cooking off more than than we need to perform that particular task. Right? It's kind of like folks that have a desk job, right, and don't realize that they have sucky posture, right? And so they get home at the end of the day and they're just friggin' exhausted, right? They don't understand it. I didn't do anything today. Hopefully not quite literally, but they meant physically with their body. Excuse me. So they can't understand it. And so, they go to the doctor and my energy's low, or they drink more coffee and that burns out their adrenals and they just end up getting more exhausted, or they try sleeping more, but sleeping more once you pass a certain threshold can actually put your body into a stasis where you, you did the extra sleeping and you got the rest, and now you can't figure out why you're still fucking exhausted. Well, it's because you bled off more energy. Anyway, so but what they don't get, or who knows, the doctor in lieu of giving them pills should have told them that your sucky posture is causing your spine to be out of alignment and your body to be in a weird position, and so to not fall over, you got a shit ton of muscles in your back working so that you don't fall over, so that your spine doesn't collapse, those kind of things. And so you've got 5, 6, 8 times the muscles firing that good posture would have. And so that's why you're exhausted, right? So you can't feel it because there are all these little support muscles, but you're just cooking off all this energy doing, well, we think we're doing nothing, but the body's firing off all this stuff to not fall down. Okay. So, but again, it leads to wasted energy. Okay. Sitting around, laying around, all that kind of stuff, right? That can lead to wasted energy as well, because it causes it to bleed out. But we'll stay in the fight context, the self-defense context here. Okay. So again, the reason why we lean into relaxation, telling people relax, 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 they're never going to get to this level of too relaxed or relaxed enough for quite a while, because whatever people think about relaxing is not that. We have to think about doing more than we think is correct, right? We have to find the opposite extreme so we can find middle, right? Most people, if they're really stiff, and this is true about anything that we're doing in our lives, right? If we're in an extreme, right? People don't realize just how far away the other extreme is, because what they see as the extreme, the opposite, is actually center. Okay, it's an interesting. It's not a concept. It's an interesting perspective, because, like when the insight finally actually happens, right? That we actually have to overshoot what we think is right, right? So anyway, but the opposite extreme, too much relaxation, right? This is problematic as well, because it results in ineffective movement and the inability to control or generate necessary force. Right? What that means is we have to work harder to get to the work state, right? So let me borrow. I'm going to go back to this analogy. That wasn't an analogy. The story of my one teacher describing things using that generic Ichimonji, Seigan, Katatehicho, pick a lineage, pick a name, right? This figure one, just this basic defensive kind of thing, right? Excuse me. So we'll talk about the energy thing first, and then we'll talk about just a couple of little things that can open this up to danger and damage if we don't know what we should be looking for and at, but the attacker does. And that doesn't mean he trained in our system. That means he's going to be an attacker, which means the harder you make it for him to do his job, he's going to start exploiting little mistakes. Okay. So if we all understand two tense, right? If I've got everything tensed up, right, to move that limb or any part of it, I have to relax muscles to be able to move things into the new position, which means I have to do something before I can move it. I'm wasting time. Okay. So not only am I bleeding off extra energy by firing more muscle than I have to. Okay. And we were led through all kinds of exercises to determine and figure out and to be able to feel exactly which muscles are firing to what degree to put the arm in the correct position, to put the fingers in the correct position, regardless of whether the thumb is here, the fingers are this, whatever, right? What is just enough so that we're firing enough, right? Without overdoing it. Because again, setting aside cooking off too much energy, if my body parts are stiff, I have to relax them to move them, which means I have to do something to do the thing I want to be doing. And again, I get it. It happens really, really fast. But even if we're losing 200 milliseconds, if we could gain that back as we do other things and we refine our movement, that's really what we're doing. We're gaining back milliseconds and they build up. They just like, grabbing the extra change in the pocket, the extra ones or whatever. My wife and I have a vacation savings little thing. It's just this little box. It's very, very narrow, right? It has a window on the front of it. And it's just, what does it say? Vacation fund or something like that, right? And you would swear to God, it was just this oddly shaped tip jar. It's just sitting at this one spot in our house that we both walk by. And instead of just carrying all this stuff around, because I tend to pay with bigger bills or my card or whatever, but like I'll load up on change and things. And so what we'll do is she'll clear out her wallet or a purse or a coat pocket this time of year. Same thing with me, right? So the big bills stay where they are, but these smaller ones, right? One, sometimes a five, loose change and all that kind of stuff go in the box. And then when vacation is coming up, it's amazing what kind of a slush fund we built up with nickels, quarters, dimes, ones, fives, whatever, that just, wow, look at that, right? There's a meal at a fancy restaurant, or there's some extra to do this other thing, and it was just accrued along the way, right? So same thing in a fight or a self-defense situation. Anything that we can do to trim the excess off of a movement, to not have to do something, right? To be able to move more directly, the better. Okay. So again, that's on one side, right? So it's not just a bleeding off of energy, but it's also a time factor, right? If I'm too stiff, it slows me down because I have to relax certain muscles so that the ones I need to fire can move the limb where I need it to go. Okay. And I get it, right? Comes really fast, whatever. Okay. But if he and I are the same speed doing what we're doing, and I can be faster, not by trying harder, but by actually letting go of something that's actually holding me back, and that's what causes me to win, I'm all in. Okay. Now let's think about the too much relaxation. Okay. What one of my teachers called dead energy. Now it's not really dead, right? Because dead energy, if you've ever been to a funeral, you know what dead energy looks like. Okay. Or if you've ever been on the streets, okay, and whether it was by your hand or somebody else's, right, or nature, dead energy looks like. Okay. So it's not quite dead energy, right? But too relaxed. Okay. So I'll see people that are just, arms, the shoulders are hanging down and the limbs and whatnot. Maybe even the hand is resting on the body or whatever, right? Or they've got this thing straight, but the fingers, there's this gap in the fingers, right? And so it's too relaxed. And so now what has to happen when we need to do something is we have to fire up more to get it in motion. We have to dump more energy into the limb to get it in motion, right? And so it takes longer. Okay. I often give the analogy of a California stop. And if you're not from the US, whatever that equates to from where you're from, that's why most people don't stop completely at a freaking intersection, especially at stop signs, right? Because they can feel how much the engine of the car is being taxed. It's almost like they're being taxed, right? So it just takes them longer to get back up to speed again, right? So again, either side steals these little micro moments, okay? Um, but the too relaxed also creates a problem because was it last week, James? I think maybe during Whiteboard Wednesday, maybe, or during one of the classes, I reminded everyone that, and this is a big Togakure thing, right? That you control their narrative or control the narrative that's going on, right? Control their reality. There's different ways to describe the same thing from different lineages. If you're not controlling it, somebody else is. Okay, if you're not controlling your narrative, your reality, somebody else will. Okay, so it's the same thing here, where if I'm too relaxed, okay, and let's say that everything else is working well, right? My alignment, I'm on his center. I've removed as many of my targets as possible. I'm controlling the Kukan, so he's got distance problems to contend with and all that, right? If I have that stuff working for me, he's going to have to find something else. Okay. And so one of the things I introduce to students very early on who start to get the relaxed thing, but they overshoot it. And so they're doing this kind of thing. Right. So it could be somebody a beginner who just happens to do this, or it's somebody in the intermediate phases who's getting it and they overshoot it, right? And so everything's relaxed, and so their movement's more fluid and all that kind of stuff, but they're leaving openings, right? They're leaving things out there that the attacker can exploit and actually break us more easily. They don't need to hit us to do it. Okay? And what I mean by that is, if I'm too relaxed, I know how this probably looks right to a lot of people. Right? It's actually this. Watch my fingers. Right? I know those of you who are on audio only, you can't watch it, but the sides of my fingers are together. Okay, not stiffly. They're just touching. They're closed. Right? Pointed straight, but they're closed. The thumb is down or tucked away. Right? And again, it's because of the shape of my thumb. I can keep it straight this way, but some people's thumb digits, toes, whatever, curls up right where the nail is, right from that knuckle right there to the tip. It curls more. So if I had a finger that my thumb that stuck up this way, that would be problematic, right? So I would want to tuck that away. Okay, and the reason for this is, again, this is just enough. We'll talk about just enough here in a bit. But for right here, if I relax too much to where that separates, most people don't see the problem because their partner doesn't see the problem, and so their partner doesn't exploit it. Right? The black belts in my dojo will exploit it. Right? And so what I mean by that is the bad guy just needs to reach out and snag a finger because there's gap, there's space. Right? So if they snag that finger, they can twist it, they can snap it, they can apply pressure to it, that kind of thing, and start and control you, right? Cause pain or whatever. Or even if the fingers they're just too relaxed, right? Take a palm strike or the back of a hand or whatever and smack at the tips of the fingers and cause those fingers to crunch in, right? So therein lies a problem, okay? But if we understand how this works, it's much easier for an attacker to grab a single finger or two fingers to cause damage, to control us, than to grab the whole unit, right? They grab that whole unit. It's much more difficult to maneuver this whole thing to injure any one or two fingers because they're splinted. And again, the same thing with the thumb position. Mine can lay flat or relatively flat, so it's even across the board. It's harder to get a hold of. But if somebody had a thumb that sticks up this way, or the thumb was just floating, it's the same thing. Okay? So again, too much cooks off energy and causes a time problem. Too little causes a time problem and can leave us exposed to attacks that exploit the fact that we can't move as quickly because we have to gear up to go, right? So the key here is in finding what we might call the sweet spot of energy efficiency. And that is where you use only what's necessary to accomplish the goal. So the first question to ask is, what is the correct position, in this case, of the lead arm or the wrist hand or the fingers in any particular kamae? Okay? Because even in Jumonji no kamae, right, the hands are relaxed. They're not stiff. As soon as we stiffen them, this tension, the way the muscles are wired to bones and everything, goes all the way up to here and over the top of the shoulder to the upper mid back, right? We're going to hold it like we're holding sand or one of those toy jacks from back in the day that if you stepped on it, they were worse than Legos, right? Or like a sparrow's egg, a small bird egg, right? That's raw. Okay. So too little, that sand or whatever is going to pour out or drop out of your hand. Too much, you either stab yourself with a jack or you crush the egg. Okay. So there's this thing. So my default state is this relaxed, correct positioning, not too tense, where it's going to inhibit movement, breathing, in this case, right? But not too loose to where, like a speed shot, it's going to be more whippy, flashy kind of thing. And when I hit, it's not going to have that battering ram kind of feel to it. Okay. So again, is this something that new people need to worry about? No. Okay. By and large, 99% of new people need to focus on relaxing more because they come in and they're too stiff. And again, either because of the way they work out or the beliefs they have or the anxiety or whatever, that there's just this extra tension. So we need to focus on relaxation. But we do need to aim for the other side, right? Too much relaxation. Okay. Well, shit. I mean, why would I do that? Why don't I just settle on one, I need to understand the detriment. Okay. Because ego always wants to get over something. It always wants to, well, since I can't, I just do it like this. Sure, you can. You can do whatever you want. Okay. I'm just here to help. Okay. Yeah, I know, but I mean, this works for me. Okay. Well, okay. So I'll have somebody else say go, and you and I are just going to drop into Jumonji. And then they're going to say go again, and we're going to move to, let's say, Ichimonji. And we'll see who wins. Okay. And even if I count, right, I give people a huge head start, right? I'll say, okay, I'm going to say a number in Japanese, ichi, ni, whatever. You already know, you're listening for it, okay? So as soon as I start making the sound, just move into kamae, right? And what I'm going to do, I'm not going to cheat this. I'm actually going to cheat for you. I'm going to say the whole number before I bother to move. And I'm not going to say it fast. I'm just going to say each, ni, just that. And I'm not going to move until after I say it. Okay. Just so you know, I'm not cheating. Right. And since action's faster than reaction, yes, I said the word, but you're going to move as soon as you hear it. As soon as not the whole sound. You don't have to wait for the whole sound. As soon as you hear me, as soon as you hear that first thing, move. Okay. So I should be lagging behind. But I still get there first. Okay? Because people fire muscles to get into position, right? As opposed to relaxing and dropping into position and firing the muscles to catch, firing the muscles to go to the proper form, right? Again, we can describe it, we can demonstrate it, but anyway, so what I wanted to start off with is not just the bleeding off of energy, but how much we have to do, right? If I'm too stiff, I've got to relax before I can move. And if I'm too relaxed, I have to pump more energy in to get up to cruising speed so I can maneuver, so I can do the thing, right? So there's this happy medium. So if you're upper intermediate or advanced folks, I'm definitely talking to you. If you're below that, keep this in mind. This is the litmus test, okay? Because there's only certain muscle groups that fire. I'm going to put my arm up in a standard punch position, right? Just kind of 30 degrees off square, not full on taijutsu, ski, that kind of thing, right? So about 30 degrees off the plane of the chest this way, fingers curl in to make whatever fist you're making, right? There's always going to be a natural bend here, right? This is why training in armor is important. Flak vest, whatever, right? So there's anatomically straight and there's geometrically straight. Right? Geometrically straight throws things out of position, okay? But there's certain muscles that put that or move that into position, okay? Deltoid, little bit of trapezius muscles that connects right here, or whatever that related muscle is right there. Little bit of trap muscles back here, not a lot, okay? A little bit of lat muscle, but it's, deltoid does that. Some muscles in here do this, right? And tricep in this case fires to move this out. There's a little bit of suspension stuff going on up here, but becomes a matter of isolation, right? Isolating the muscles that do the work and realizing that everything else is or are anchors. Everything else. They're not necessary. They make us feel powerful. They make us feel like we're doing a lot. We are. But it doesn't do anything to make the arm more powerful or whatever. And it doesn't do anything to conserve energy. The more muscles I fire to do the same thing, let's say I'm jacked this way, right? So I've got this shoulder forward here a little bit. I've got my fist really clenched, which means I'm firing all these muscles in here, right? I got a little bit of stuff going on in here, right? Deltoids definitely firing. Chest muscles definitely firing because of where I am, right? But if I just isolate two of these groups, biceps are firing and the triceps are firing because I'm in here this way, right? Okay. Well, wait a minute. Biceps do this. Triceps do this. Audio only people, biceps, curl your arm. Triceps, extend your arm. No muscles in the body push. All muscles pull. Okay? They create things that make the machine move. Okay. But if my biceps are tight as I'm extending my arm to punch, I'm firing opposite muscle groups. So the biceps firing slow the punch down. I know it feels powerful and I know I have whatever speed I have. But if I could not fire the biceps, my arm will extend faster because it's not doing the opposite of what I'm trying to do with my tricep. Interesting, huh? Okay. So again, when Hatsumi Sensei or any of the master teachers say relax, for a lot of folks, when they parrot that word back, relax, that word doesn't mean what they think it means. Okay. What are we relaxing? What are we doing that's getting in our way? Okay. All right. So, just make sure I didn't miss something here. That was my example. Yeah. Okay, so again, just to reiterate one more time, the ideal state is a balance, not too rigid, not too loose, right? For those of you who've been following along for a while, here recently we just covered the concept of zanshin. Right? Most people call it awareness or alertness or whatever. It goes way farther than that, but we'll keep it at a simplistic form for the moment, right? So we could call this zanshin no tai, right? Or something close, right? My butchered Japanese. Okay, so just body awareness. Okay, we're not even talking about Tai Sabaki yet. Okay, Tai Sabaki is body management. Right, but the key to even approaching this idea in Budo Ninpo Taijutsu, where you're actually doing less or you're doing nothing to produce the action. The hell is that? How do you even do that? Well, see, one of the ways that I get into let's say I'm going from Shizen to Jumonji faster than everybody else is one, gravity helps. And two, my legs are in the proper starting position to begin with, right? Which means that the tib fib and the thigh bone and the shin bone assembly, right there at the knob of the kneecap, where they come together, right? I find the slip point, right? If I just relax muscles, and then it kind of slips, right? And then what I want to do is pull the femur back, the head of the femur back, just before that slip point. So now my thighs are working more. Okay. Yep. Absolutely. But you said, yeah, but they're not tense. They're working to hold that unit. Okay? And this is where tension and relaxation come in. Okay? So when I move my leg to take a step forward to drop into Jumonji no Kamae, I actually do nothing, where everybody else pitches to shift the balance or the weight distribution in their legs and their balance so they can move the front leg. And then what they're doing is they're firing quads to pick the leg up. They're firing all kinds of things to move that foot forward, to position in place and whatnot. And what I'm doing is sinking, drop. And what I do is I just stop firing the thigh muscles that are holding that proper Shizen position on the kneecap. So I let it slip. And when it slips, my body, my brain will throw my foot forward, right? If I move my foot like a rocking chair rung from heel to ball of foot and not pick up, put down like Herman Munster, right? Or Frankenstein, right? If I just, if I, that's how it's conditioned to move, like a rocking chair rung, right? And so when the knee pushes out from that drop, the heel comes up and the body uses just enough muscle to reposition that under me to catch. And the arms, the lower arms, just kind of swing up. They just enough muscle, pecs and bicep, just enough to bring the hands up in front and just enough in the forearms to hold the sparrow's eggs. So sink, lift. Okay. So I'm doing a little bit of something with the upper arms and the body to bring the upper part of the kamae into position, but I'm doing a whole lot of nothing for half a second to move my legs into position, because the body will adjust to get the front foot where it needs to go, right? It's just faster if I just let gravity drop me into position. Right? And obviously we're firing core muscles to, not let things collapse and whatnot. But I'm not racing the same way everyone is, right? I'm not trying to do the same thing that the average person does to put their arms in place, get their leg in place, get into this combat position, right? All the muscles that fire, all the weight transfer from leg to leg, the balance shifting, all that kind of stuff, right? I'm not doing all that extra. So of course I'm getting it into position faster. So I'm not doing what everybody else is doing, only faster, or whatever or better. Right? I end up in position faster because I do it differently. Right? And this is a huge piece, because we can get our head wrapped around that. Then we can understand how to exploit what he's doing because he doesn't have this training. Right? And he won't be able to exploit what he's used to exploiting because we're not using our body the same way. And yet somehow it looks the same, but it produces more power. It looks the same, but it goes faster. Right? I mean, I incite students to go faster. Look at the kids in a kids class, and I'll go, how is the fat old bald guy going faster than you guys? Right? But if you stand next to me and you look at how I'm putting things into place, it doesn't look like I'm going any faster. But I start later and get there sooner. Well, how's that possible? Action is faster than reaction. They moved first. How did you get there? Because I'm not doing as much work. There's less cogs in the machine, so to speak. Okay, so not only is there energy conservation in place, not only is it relaxed energy, but it's doing less to produce more. Oh, has anybody ever heard me or any other master teacher or Soke ever say those things? But hearing the words and understanding the language they're spoken in, and understanding how to do that, right? The first assumption we have to make is that there's something I'm missing. I don't understand how to do it. Regardless of what ego wants to tell us, because I understand the words and Okay? But see how long it took me to kind of explain what took 6 months to a year to get right? Because I had little to no body awareness. I mean, I knew that I had arms and legs and I could feel and things like that. But the kind of body awareness to be able to feel those muscles and to feel me firing something that did nothing to move an arm into the position it was supposed to go in or whatever, that kind of body awareness. And then that leads to a whole bunch of other, we'll call them secondary skill sets or side effects, because it just wakes up parts of the mind and parts of the brain that use other things, and it produces other effects. Okay? Like, I don't know, Kuji, Saki, other types of Zanshin awareness, and some of the other stuff that's listed in the Seishin Teki stuff that's coming out. Okay, so let's take a little pause here, see if there's any questions or comments before I jump into the next piece. Were the analogies or the examples helpful to anyone? Like, I just borrowed the arm from Ichimonji and a couple of things there for Jumonji, but is that helpful, or am I singing to the choir and everybody already knows what the hell they're doing? I mean, we all think we know what we're doing, which is why when I go to Japan and work with teachers, I take 2 or 3 empty notebooks along, planning to fill them before I come back home, because I'm not paying that amount of money to go over there and be surrounded by people who are as far ahead of me as my students think I am ahead of them. And I'm just going to, assume I know most of it, and I'm just picking up a couple of extra tips. Yeah, no. James, anything from anybody? Questions, comments?
No, sir. Nothing showing.
Okay, cool. This is all that we can do based on this format, right? Which is why it's important to, when I say get to class, I don't. I mean, in today's world, you can do classes via Zoom or whatever. The only thing to be missing is I can't grab you by the body if you're a tactile learner and reposition your body parts or get you to move. But anyway, I know dojo training is best. Ilan Gattagno, been around for a long time in this art. He's a personal student of Doron Devon. Just wrote a book not too long ago, year or three. James, you know what I'm talking about? Book is called "It Takes a Ninja," and it was really written for teachers. Okay? And there's a whole section in there on using technology and being able to convey things that way, because it's how things work. I mean, you know, I think people got, you know, they again, it's anchoring bias, right? Because we were exposed to the idea of martial arts schools and dojos and whatnot, and therefore, right, that's the best. Anything else is wrong. Well, shit. We've already talked about that in the past, how the dojo concept was actually created by Buddhist and meditation people, and martial artists borrowed it nearly a century later. That early training was not. So that's kind of a conundrum, isn't it? James, what do you think? Right? For the traditionalist, right? They want to do everything the traditional way, right? But if the dojo concept was way farther ahead based on what people were doing when this stuff was put together for us, right? Historically, that's called cognitive dissonance, right? So which one of those traditional ones are better, right? Right? If tradition is best, and I want to do it the pure form, like when this stuff was put together, but you know, training in a dojo is best. Uh, uh, right. So, yeah. Anyway, all right. So nothing. No, we're good.
No, sir.
Okay, onward and upward, or outward, or whatever. Okay, so let's take a look at this from a nature kind of thing. Okay, Hatsumi Sensei is always pointing out nature, and this shizen is a primary core concept, right? So tension is natural as well. Okay, relaxation is natural. But we should probably come at this from a couple of different perspectives to understand how, like in Kotoryu, okay? Kotoryu. A lot of folks grew up in this system learning a Bujinkan hybrid. And because people are overly tense, Hatsumi Sensei leads on this, you know. Now, of course, he's able to create a lot of power out of seemingly nothing, but you get there, right? But Kotoryu at its base, right? We're going to focus on this for our upcoming spring camp in May. Is fucking brutal. It's not what people think it is, right? It is the complementary opposite to Gyokoryu. Gyokoryu has more nuance and finesse and things like that to it, because it's about control and maneuvering and manipulation, right? Kotoryu, right? You take it right to them, right? Koppo Jutsu, we're going to go into this, like I said, a lot more during that weekend, but Koppo Jutsu, while it does mean bone method or bone skills, bone arts, it implies, you know, attacking bones, right? To crush them, to break them, that kind of thing. Koppo is a contraction of kotsu, bone, and hole, right? Way, method, skills, right? So kotsu hole, we can say it. Japanese have a hard time linguistically, so it turns into koppo, right? But it's not just about the bones themselves. Koppo Jutsu focuses on collapsing his structure, but not just his physical structure, also his will to fight, right? And it does it very quickly. Kotoryu kata have way fewer moves than Gyokoryu kata, right? You find that place take the fight to them, right? And a lot of these things look extremely powerful. James has been helping relaunch and rebuild the curriculum as we move through these different things. And there's been a couple of Koto Yukata that, like, eyebrows go up. And because it looks like we're doing something that looks like hard style karate. But the way things are generated and the way the techniques are launched and whatnot, there's still tons of energy conservation going on, right? It's just cutting to the quick. It's just eliminating extra movement and things like that. Okay. But this is all ultimately based and grounded in nature, and it's a core survival principle, right? The core principle, or the core law, central law of survival, is energy conservation. Okay? If the return on investment for the energy applied is less than what was expended, the entity dies. Okay? So if we study animals, which is actually one of the Ura Goton in the Togakure's Jupo, in the Tonko no Jutsu, right? The secret of secrets within Togakure Ryu. Studying of animals is to study how different ones apply this survival thing, whether it's escape and evasion or it's predatory hunting, right? Because that's natural as well. Okay? So in combat, right, and in life, I've been talking about this the whole time. Unnecessary energy expenditure is a liability, right? And it's also unnatural. I mean, we're not born into using more. I mean, shit, human beings, we're just masters at trying to figure out how to do less and get more, right? If I could show up for an 8-hour job, jack my jaw talking to people, or squeeze in extra breaks along the way, not get fired, do less, and still get the same paycheck, oh shit, I'm in. But there's a difference between doing less, producing less, but getting paid for, right? So people should not be surprised when the employer, right, who's that greedy bastard that's got a printing press in his basement printing off money for my paycheck, right? We should understand why he goes, well, see, I'm not paying for 8 hours of productivity and I'm getting 5. So either jack it up or get the hell out, kind of thing. But, he's the asshole, or she, or whatever. Okay? Politics aside, James and I were just talking about this earlier, right? Because it's the times, right? And as ninja, we pay attention, right? Because the times can turn into bad shit fast, regardless of what they are. And so we were just talking about this earlier, how, for probably our entire lives, we've heard these jokes about how, you go to the DMV or you go to government offices or whatever, and you got all these government employees, right, that don't do a whole lot and get these freaking paychecks. And now somebody's looking to weed the system, right? And now people are pissed off because, like that didn't exist. Those jokes existed for a reason, okay? Because they point to truths. Okay? It's just the way it is, right? So anyway, right? Everybody's fine until they get caught, and then it's the other guy that's the asshole. All right. Anyway, so energy expenditure is a liability. Okay, we get this, right? So nature's most effective predators conserve energy, right? How long does, well, even just a house cat, right? Dogs, whatever, right? Let alone the lion or the tiger, right? How long do they sleep during a day? Or if they're not sleeping, they're resting. They're just laying around, right? Any documentary you've ever see, right? And if they are, moving, they're just walking to a new spot, survey the area, lay down again, right? Pant a whole lot, okay? Because they're saving up energy And then when they're on the hunt, right, how much of that is actual all out balls to the wall running to catch dinner or lunch or whatever, right? Before they go back into rest mode. Okay. And they miss more often than they catch, but can't miss so often that, right? Which is why nothing goes to waste, all that kind of stuff, right? But they only use burst speed when necessary. Okay. This is true in physical combat. It's true in strategic planning, or it should be, right? And it's true in personal resilience. But again, we overrest, then we don't feel like it when we have to move because the body is settled down too much. Okay? Our own Junin Taiso, body conditioning exercises, stretching, those kind of things, right? Combat the human body's natural tendency to come to rest. If we rest too long, it's just as bad as cooking off too much energy, and we end up feeling exhausted. Okay. Rarely can we maintain 100% for too long, right? Without the need to go to the opposite extreme to do what? Why do we rest? To recharge, right? To let the muscles rest, regain, put glycogen back in there, give them time to heal and grow because of the exertion, right? Right. Recharge the system, get the energy supplies back up. Right. One of my teachers at one point, and this is reflected in the movie The Matrix. Right. One of them said a long time ago, look, your body's a battery. Right? You have a finite amount of energy, right? And you need to parse it out. You need to be careful about how you just like let it bleed out. Right. And so so when we get into a survival situation, we're already adept at doing that, right? But some people take the relaxation thing a bit too far, right? Because they're lazy by nature. I know nobody wants to hear that, but it's true. Some people turn the art into something that it's not because they want to be the guy who's jacked, jumping around, beating the shit out of things, and they just that expenditure of energy feels good, but they are replacing the core elements of the art with ones from something else, but the moves are the same, kind of, because they end up getting changed too, right? So, but that's the key, right? Too much relaxation can actually make you feel tired all the time. Okay. Somebody, like I said earlier, right? Somebody will say, if you maybe having a coworker, or maybe you felt this way at some point, right? I understand it, right? I slept for 12 hours and didn't do anything today, and I feel exhausted, right? It's not exhausted because of overwork, but because we ground it out, bled the energy away. Okay. There's two ways to bleed off excess energy. Okay? By activity, right? And that could be talking a whole lot or moving around a whole lot or whatever, and doing exactly what I'm doing right now, sitting or lying down. Okay. Except it's not like the post-death, uh, you know, uh, lividity that occurs where the blood and the fluids, right? That's how we know if the body's been moved from the original crime scene and whatnot, right? Because there's bruising in more places than they were just laying. But by sitting too long, by laying too long, right? The energy, there's a lividity to that. It's just we relax too much, and then the body's in a condition where it takes a lot through a whole bunch of different places to get shit moving again, right? And so, again, just as detrimental, right? So we can look at this. Now, I don't know if in your training, right? Because the way I was introduced to this art way back in 80, 81, there was a whole lot more things being taught than there are today. Okay. And one of those was wilderness survival stuff. Okay? There's nothing in the ninja stuff about wilderness survival. Bullshit. But anyway, let's just say that there isn't. Okay, these people lived in the freaking mountains, away from everything else. I don't know how many people studied their history, but there was no plumbing. There was no running water. There were no electric or gas or whatever stoves, right? So people had to learn how to collect and or purify water. They had to learn to build fires for heat and or cooking and all this stuff, trapping, plant identification, and collect. The shit that we call survival stuff today was their everyday life. Right? So, pardon me if I call bullshit on people that are only looking for something to be written down. Right? You guys have heard me say stuff like this before, right? I mean, there's no guidebook unless you're doing something special for, telling you how to breathe. Okay, we just assume that if you're upright and talking, you can breathe. Right? Just an assumption. Now, if you're doing special things, you might learn specialty breathing things, but we don't write down shit that's a duh, of course, kind of thing. Okay? So, but let's look at one of these things. Okay, survival and water collection. Okay, and the cost of energy. Just a quick analogy here, right? So imagine that you need water. Okay, you're out. Who knows how you got there, but you're out there and you need water. It's just one of those non-negotiable things. Okay. And so if you're in my dojo, if you're in my program, we use the Godai for everything, right? So each of the elements represents a type of water collection method and purification method. Okay. If we're doing fire building, then it represents a different type of like a lighting method, those kind of things, right? So it makes it easier for people to remember. But I have a broad skill base. So here's the thing, right? I need water. And like I'm near a cliff, and I just kind of as a part of surveying the area, right? There's lush grass and vegetation and stuff like that. But there's this cliffside, right? I look down and there's like an underground spring, like I don't know, 20 feet down, right? That's just like running right out of the side of the cliff, right? Because I mean, the planet is just a network of these underground springs and water supplies and things like that. So it's there, right? But I'm going to have to climb down to get it, and then I'm going to have to climb back up, right, to be able to use it, right? Not lose it, that kind of thing, right? Or I've got the materials for it, so I could set up some evaporation tents. Okay. Now, if I climb down, right, to the spring, okay, I'm going to get a lot more water, but how much is the energy cost, let alone the risk to my life? Okay. Because the water's not going to matter if the rope breaks or I slip or whatever, right? So, remember what I talked about with that ROI, that return on investment. Okay. So, what's the energy cost? How much more water am I going to give up with the exertion through sweat and evaporation, through the moisture that comes out, through heavy breathing, that kind of stuff, right? To get that, right? How much do I need, right? Or like I said, I can set up evaporation tents. These things are slower, right? They'll supply significantly less, take more time to do it, right? But they require very little effort. So again, there's a trade-off. Right? There's a trade-off. And we have to be careful, because if we find ourselves in a zero sum, that's breaking even, right? Or a negative sum position, that's backing up. Okay? Nature and the universe, I wouldn't say that they're cruel. They just they don't give a shit about you. Okay. You're either going to adapt and survive, or you will eventually break down into the constituent parts that we're all made of, and you will resupply the ground where your final resting place was with the nitrogen and all the things that those lush grasses and vegetation need to continue to grow. Okay? It's just circle of life. Okay. So same applies to food, right? Okay. So, we're scouring around. We got all this, like I said, grass and vegetation and stuff, right? And there's, looks like there's rabbits or small birds or whatever. Okay. But the calorie cost, right, outweighs the energy gained, right? Because grass, right, unless there's a variety out there that I don't know about that's poisonous, most grass is edible, except you're going to cook off a whole bunch of calories and vitamins and nutrients trying to digest it, which we cannot, unless you're part cow, can't digest it. So we get nothing from it. So you can fill yourself up on it, enjoy the eating process, and die with a stomach full of grass. Okay? There's lots of even foods that we eat now, like cabbage and things like that, right? They're considered to be negative calorie foods. It's not because celery, right? You get like 5 calories per half a stick or whole stalk or whatever, right? Not 5 calories. I'm sorry. You get like 45, give or take, right? But you're going to expend 50 calories or more digesting it. So you lost 5. You can't keep that up. Not in a survival situation. Okay, fights are the same. Okay, so grass is edible, but it's non-digestible. Okay, rabbits, certain small birds. Okay, while it will nourish you for a little while, was the calorie intake from that small thing that you had to stalk, trap, and or catch, skin or defeather, and process, giving you enough to replace, right, what you expended to process it and digest it? The answer is no. You can die of starvation, right, on a diet of rabbit. Okay, I know people eat that stuff all the time. They eat all kinds of other things too. Okay, in our modern world, as long as you're not moving around too much. You watch these survival shows, right? These people post up and they camp and whatnot, but the ones that tap out early, man, they're cooking off a whole bunch, but they're also resting a whole lot. And they end up resting a whole lot if, the bear comes in and steals all the fish they had stockpiled or whatever. Okay. It's not just good or bad decision making with the hunting and the stockpiling and what kind of shelter they're building. And it's return on investment. Okay. Every movement, every action, self-defense, self-defense, right? Are we combating the forces of nature, or are we combating Joe Cool Jackwagon who decides that, we should expend some energy to not die? Okay. So now in both cases, physical self-defense, defending against a, human attacker or whatnot, and a wilderness survival thing, the same thing is true, right? Something's better than nothing. There's lots of people that have taken all kinds of programs and learned all kinds of systems that are not this one and have survived just fine. Okay. So something's better than nothing, right? And again, we'll feel a lift in energy if I survive a self-defense situation, whatever, right? I've got that, that experience. I've got that feeling of pride and, or holy shit, I'm glad I made it through that, whatever. Okay. But ultimately, right, these things are diminishing our stores. They're not replenishing them, right? Or the things we did to survive other things, or the way that we fought because we fought like everybody else. Okay, great. But other than the experience, what did we learn to do better, right? Okay. So again, let's get back to physical self-defense, right? In training, movement must provide a return on investment, preferably a net gain. What that means is you're getting more for less. Right? It's the human thing, right? It's why some people are just attracted to sales and coupons and whatever. Okay? Because we're looking to get more for less. And if we get it for free, well, then we do very little with it for very long, because free has a zero-sum value, and most people who get free shit don't train for very long. It's been my experience over 40 couple of years. Okay. Those who pay less complain more, train less, quit sooner. Go figure. Okay. But return on investment, not just what they're paying for training and the amount of time they spend with their teacher, but also the commitment level and all that kind of stuff, right? So ultimately, in the long run, and all my serious students that have been around forever look at it and they're like, yeah, but look at how much I got, right? So that's the difference. Anyway, so again, preferably a net gain, all right? And it shouldn't be just about action for the sake of action. Okay, a lot of people do stuff because they feel like they need to, right? If I'm in a sparring randori situation with somebody and I just wait just a little bit longer, right? I'm just then nothing is happening. 98% of people will initiate an attack because it's taking too damn long, right? Or if they're supposed to be just doing defensive response, just evasion, right? And I'm, coming into attack, or one of the black belts are, and we wait just a little bit too long, right? Longer than they're comfortable with, or longer than they think it should take. They'll drop their guard and go, well, and that's when we go. Okay? Because they can't just rest and wait. Something's got to happen. That's mental tension. That could also be emotional tension. I need something to happen. Like, I don't like this nothing happening kind of thing. So when something happens, then we're not prepared because we were like all caught up in other things. Or now we're too damn tired because, right? Okay. So again, too much training or training that overdoes certain elements can be just as detrimental as too little in others. Right. So an example of this is, again, I had another teacher that discouraged us from doing too many repetitions of a given movement, whether it's moving into ichimonji or it's could even be doing jumping jacks or whatever. And I get it, pushing things and whatnot, right? But if we do it too much, right? Like I did 30 repetitions of chino kata. Yeah, how many of them were right? Well, they all felt right. Yeah, I know. However, that's because that's what you're used to feeling. Right? How many of them were correct based on the ideal that you want to be producing in a bad situation? Okay. So again, teacher told me, you can do 100 repetitions of chino kata, but after a point, fatigue forces your body to compensate for those muscles that are tiring out, right? And that creates bad muscle memory because the more I do, the more fatigue they get. Okay? It's kind of like doing, if you've ever done sit-ups, okay? And I don't mean crunches. I mean like those Roman chair kind of things we used to do in the military. Okay. Right. If we're doing those in a dojo, we make people make fists and put them next to their ears with their elbows up, not grab behind their head, because as their core muscles start to burn out, they will yank on their head to pull themselves up because they've got to complete that next one, and they're just messing up their neck, right? They're yanking on this freaking connection where the skull's plugged into the atlas, and it will start to cause neck pain and all kinds of crap, right? They're not doing more, and they're not doing more with the core muscles because the core muscles are burned out. So now they're firing whatever they need to throw themselves up in that position. So they're not doing anything for the muscles they think they're working on. Okay. So 3 to each side is sufficient to keep it within that window so that they are proper. But if we start going past that, other muscles will start to compensate for the ones that are burning out. And yeah, we can do 100 repetitions, but how many of them were correct based on the muscle groups that should be working and the flexibility and adaptability within the joints before the stiffness of all the other support muscles and helper muscles kick in to complete the intended goal. So what is the goal? Is the goal to make ourselves feel all warm and fuzzy because I can do 100 repetitions? Or is it to get the correct movement into muscle memory so that it doesn't matter how fucking fast or how slow I go, the movement's correct? Okay. So the point here is that instead of reinforcing incorrect movement, it's better to just do 3 reps per side, right? Allowing the correct neuromuscular pattern to develop without unnecessary strain. Okay? So if we're going to do muscle building, then do muscle building, but probably not with the combat movements, because that's going to cause stiffness and other. We're going to be firing other muscles, and it's going to feel right because as we do more and the pain kicks in and things like that, right? Neurotransmitters, right? Endorphins, dopamine, those kind of things get triggered as pain dampeners. And so if these chemicals are fired to not allow us to feel pain, what else can't we feel? All the other shit that's happening, so it feels perfectly fine. Okay. Got to be careful, right? So I have a t-shirt my wife got me, was it last Christmas? It wasn't this Christmas. It must have been last Christmas, right? It has a Viking on it. It says it's better to stand and fight than to run, right? Because if you run, you'll only die tired, right? It's fucking brilliant. I thought it was awesome. Anyway, so understanding this principle, right, helped me, and hopefully, right, eventually help my students to see that training, right, as an energy investment. Okay, with the goal is a return on investment, right? A return on investment in skill, in endurance, adaptability, right? Rather than just a random shot in the dark, rather than just doing stuff, right? With the more is better attitude, right? Without understanding what we're really learning and getting wired into our brain, our body, and our system as a whole. Okay. Now, please note, because I get people every once in a while that listen to this shit and they go, "Oh, I get it, right? All students suck." I was a student. I'm still a student, right? This is not about students sucking. This is about look, we're good at what we do. We've done all kinds of training. We've put all this time and effort in, right? We're already good at what we do. But is the goal to be good at a dance or movement form, or is the goal for survival and the other person may already be bigger, faster, stronger, or whatever, based on the way the human body, or the way most people use the human body? Okay. So if we are, again, the subjectiveness here is them being bigger, stronger, faster. No, there is them being bigger in stature. I can't do anything about, but stronger because they've got bigger muscles, or because, right, that they're using them the same way everybody else does, right? Or they're faster that way or whatever. The only way for me to do things to be stronger is to be in a better position and to focus on leverage, right? And attacking weak points with stronger ones. So I don't go head to head or attack strong ones with weak ones, right? This is in Sun Tzu's Art of War, right? The only way to be faster, right, is to shorten the time between point A and point B, right? Not if contracting my muscles allowed me to be faster than him, then I'd be the faster one. But if he's faster, then muscle contraction is not the race that I can win. He's already there. Okay. And it only burns off more energy, right? You right. You'll die tired. Right. So power, right? Power is not produced by, I mean, it is conventionally, it's produced by doing more work, exerting more force and things like that, right? But power in what we're doing is a timing flow based thing, right? Get something in motion, keep it in motion, right? And allow it to move. A waterfall is powerful, and a waterfall is created not because the water went off the cliff. It's because of the exertion of gravity on the water and the amount of drop that it has, right? The time and the distance that it falls, right? So if we can use and pick up on inertia, gravity, and those kind of things, right, everything changes. So I don't have to hit harder to be more powerful. If I let my arm go dead at a certain point, again, let go of the muscle use so that gravity pulls on it. And then there's some inertia behind some initial movement, right? And then just before it hits, right, I catch it and form that fist. I get the same or more power than somebody who hauled off and slammed that thing. But that was slower, took more time, no matter how fast he is. Okay. So the only way to be more powerful or exist, or at least for him to perceive it, or his body to perceive it, faster, stronger, is to apply different principles and concepts to it. So again, this all comes from nature. We just need to apply that. Right? Because I know when I first started with this stuff, right, I ended up in South Korea. As a military policeman. There was another guy in my unit who was married to a Korean girl, learned Taekwondo from his dad, lightning fast, right? I didn't understand Ichimonji. I saw these kamae as stances, and I tried. We had a little friendly match one day. I got my freaking ass and my head handed to me. This guy was lightning fast, right? But I tried to use Ichimonji like this stylized guard position that was just a replacement for several other martial arts that I did. And I was just swapping things out. But I didn't understand the nature of Ichimonji no Kamae. And so therefore I couldn't be fast, quick, light on my feet, and whatnot. A lot of people believe that Ichimonji is too big and you can't be fast in Ichimonji. That's a sign that they're trying to use Ichimonji like these other stances. It's why they bounce around in them. It's why they modify them, right? So they can do ninja taekwondo or ninja pick a hard style. Anyway, right? So let's just get through here. Okay, so let's take a look at how this applies to life outside the dojo, okay? Which is ultimately our life, right? I hate to pop the bubbles and people go, martial arts is my life. Okay, well, I'm sorry. There's a lot more experiences out there that'd be really, really cool. Okay, but that tells me that they don't have that much of a life, or they can't translate the principles and concepts to life. Right? The concepts and principles are universal. just because in the dojo we're applying them to armed or unarmed combat doesn't mean that they don't work in relationship building or child raising or project management or whatever. The same. Okay. So again, same principles apply to managing stress, avoiding burnout, maintaining resilience in daily life. Okay. Many students come to training feeling overwhelmed by life, by family, by work, right? Believing that they have to catch up or work harder to be worthy of training. Right? I get students contact me all the time, like, all right, I'm ready to go, man. I got like 2 to 3 hours a day to dedicate. And, oh man, really? Jesus. Okay. How about if you start with 15 minutes a day working on something you learned that past week or something that you're 15 minutes. Okay. Sustained for an hour or 2 hours. What the hell are you going to work on for an hour or 2 hours? Okay. What you're working on is feeling like, oh, I had a good workout. Okay, great. But if we end up burning out, then we lose something that's even more important than heavy duty workouts, and that's consistency. Because as soon as we stop, it only takes a couple of days for your muscles to start atrophying and going back. It only takes less than that for newly learned things to fade away from the mind as new information comes in. It's just consistency. Okay? I have a story about Hatsumi Sensei one time, a bunch of years ago. He had a couple of, one of my teachers that I've been sharing things from today, he was visiting Hatsumi Sensei's house with another teacher. And they'd been there for hours. I mean, it got really, really late. And like the last train was going to be leaving to where they needed to go from the station. And it wasn't just about Atago Station, because it's a small station, right? And a lot of these smaller stations in Japan, they shut down at a certain point, right? And so you can get the major hubs, but then you're taking a taxi home, and they're not cheap, right? So last train was going to be leaving to get them back to the hotel. But while they had been talking and all that, this torrential rainstorm had come in. Right? And so they, said their goodbyes and all that. And they got up to leave. And Hatsumi Sensei got up and they just figured he was walking them to the door, and they're, putting on their coats and whatever. And he loaned them a couple of umbrellas and stuff, and they were going to head out. Well, he's putting his rain stuff on, his, boots and whatnot. And they're like, no, Sensei, you don't have to walk us to the train station. It's okay. He goes, oh, no, I wasn't going to walk you to the train station. I walk the dogs every day, right, for 2 hours, something like that. You can read this in some of the older books. And at that point, he had like 9 dogs. So, right. But I walked the dogs for the day and need to do that. And they're like, but it's pouring out here. Well, they didn't say this. The other teacher or the other practitioner that was there with my teacher said, and Hatsumi Sensei said, see, that's the difference between you and me. Consistency. And we'll leave that one right where it is. Okay. So the reality is that progress is about sustainability, not overexertion. Okay. It's just as in movement, right? A balanced pace leads to long-term success. Okay? So this lesson is particularly powerful for those returning to training after a long break. Okay? Hopefully, anyway, right? I hope it helps them shed the guilt or pressure of feeling like they're behind and they have to catch up, or feeling like they have to train like they did 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago. Okay? Sensei, I'm just, I don't know how much of this I can do. Are you telling you don't know how much of this, as in the art, you can do, or you're not sure how much of what you used to be able to do? Because that's then, right? You're not even the same anymore. So what can you do? That's what we're going to get good at. So Soke's emphasis on relaxed movement, right? When we look at it from this direction, some students misinterpret the emphasis on relaxed movement as justification So here's a different side of things, right? It's justification for being passive or disengaged. Okay. Because nothing more relaxed than barely doing a little bit every once in a while. But, I'm on Facebook every day talking about ninjutsu. I'm on YouTube every day watching videos. I'm on, okay. Are we talking about being a student? Or are we talking about being a fan? Are we talking about being an enthusiast? I don't know. I know what I'm talking about. So we need to remember that the mind and the body are connected. Okay? They're not separate things. I know we talk about body, mind, spirit, that kind of, but they're not separate. They're three aspects of the same entity. Okay, so we'll keep to the same theme here, right? If the body's too tense or it's too relaxed, either way, right, the mind will be the same as well. Okay, so just like laying around and sleeping all the time, or laying around and binge watching Netflix or whatever. Okay, body gets sluggish. Takes a lot more to get it moving. Right. Same thing with the mind. It gets sluggish. Right. It's in receiving mode. It's not in proactive mode. So no shit, we're not going to feel motivated to do things. Whoever said that motivation was a freaking ingredient? Probably other people who were waiting for motivation to happen, and we believed them. Motivation happens after activity. If we're waiting for motivation to move us, well, look around. You see lots of people doing the same thing. Okay. So, again, to reiterate or repeat Hatsumi Sensei's lesson, just in case you signed in or joined us after the pre-intro lesson that has stuck with me from Hatsumi Sensei, right? Being too stiff, right, is the same as being dead. But being too relaxed is also a form of death. Right? True movement, the stuff we're looking for, is born between these two. Right? Things like that made me go, okay, right. First, I have to figure out what the hell he just said. And then, what does that mean? Okay, what is this in between? What is too relaxed? What's too stiff? Right? Because if I have to do like koto exertion, right, which is why koto yukata really so few moves, right? Because bam, right, you just done, right? And then there's that lull, either the seconds or moments on a battlefield before the next alignment kind of thing, or return to relaxation, go about my life, right? And till the next battle pops up. Okay, so we'll notice that the lineages that have that are more about there's more movement, there's more evasion, that kind of thing, tend to lean toward relaxation. We have some that are a good mix, but things like Kukushinden, Kotoryu, right? It's there's exertion there. There's quite a bit of exertion, right? But they finish things very quickly. Okay, so true relaxation, right? This relaxed energy. This is a result of deep skill, not lack of effort. Okay? It allows for adaptability and efficiency, right? Without unnecessary tension. You can't move anything in the body without tensing a muscle. Okay? So the question is, which muscles create the movement you're working on? For the arm, for the hand, for the foot, for the legs. Which ones? So we stop firing the other ones. And if other ones are firing and we didn't try to fire them, then we have a balance issue. So when we go to move, we're not moving correctly and the limbs aren't moving on the line they're supposed to be moving on. So it breaks the body's balance, and then the body fires other muscles to not fall down or to catch itself. We just slowed ourselves down again, and we just expended more energy. Relaxation, when properly developed, when properly cultivated, right, leads to greater control, faster reactions, right, more efficiency, which means we're conserving energy, right? We're not dumping it all into one movement, right? And the ability to maintain endurance under pressure. Right? So, a couple of quick practical takeaways here, just for training and life, right? So, if this is something that's of interest to you and you're working on it, right? Students should practice scaling their effort, right? Experimenting with varying levels of tension and relaxation in their movements, right? Something that Trice Sensei taught a lot on, right? Try doing this thing over here. It's a little more, right? Does it improve things? Does it keep the same? Does it diminish things? If it diminishes things, don't do that. Maintaining it and increasing it, I'm okay with that. Maintaining it gives me another option. Increasing it, I definitely want to practice that a whole lot more, right? And I do that with everything. Okay. That's where we start to break the kata when we're doing the shuhari model, right? And we don't just break the kata by making ad hoc variations. You break it into its three pieces: the uke nagash, right? The receiving, right? The entering, right? To enter in to his through his defenses where he can't get at you, right? And the delivery of the counterattack, right? And then each of those movements can be worked and refined. Okay? Ego doesn't like this kind of stuff because it's not entertaining anymore. Like how long do we got to do this? As long as it takes. Okay. So training should always return to efficiency. Okay. How do I produce the same or more results with less effort? Whether we're talking about strikes, evasive movements, grappling, whatever, okay? Wielding of a weapon, the goal is to accomplish more with less. Right? Just to hone in a little bit more here for overexerting students, right? Those who are pushing a little bit too much. If you're an instructor or it's you, okay, those students need help in recognizing that more effort isn't always better. Okay, training isn't about proving toughness, but about lasting efficiency and sustainability. Okay, a lot of these people that have this argument that my fights have always been this way and I win more than I lose. Okay, great. Including multiple attackers. Okay, what if it's a rabid dog, right? Like a large one, whatever. Okay, still the same fight style, still the same. Well, that's different. Yeah, see, but it's still self-defense. It's still in the same paradigm. Okay. If we do what everybody else does, where we switch out principles and concepts, like the principles and concepts we use for punching and kicking don't translate to grappling, and we don't understand, while many ground fighting things, the principles are 180 degrees opposite from what they are standing, because we don't have to worry about breaking or losing balance for the most part, right? Well, how do we know what 180 degrees is if we don't know what the first ones are, right? But they should translate. Okay, evasion's evasion, right? Control and manipulation is control and manipulation, right? Adaptability means the whole fight paradigm can change, the whole survival paradigm can change, and I just adapt, or I not adapt, but I apply the principles or concepts to that context. Right? But we had to be careful because we human beings tend to compartmentalize things. And while that's good in certain areas, in other ones like this one, right, under pressure, it's not going to be easy to access the Rolodex and pull up the right combination. So we minimize things to principles and concepts. Okay. So for the underexerting students, too much relaxation, too little effort. So it's showing up as being too slow, too relaxed, like there. For instance, very, very common mistake that students make when we're doing the osoto nage, right? Rear hip throw, which osoto means great outer, but either way, people tend to see it as a rear hip throw, right? Most students, most practitioners use too little tension in their arms when they initiate. Okay. Like the arms don't stay in a fixed position as I move. So my body creates the push on one side and the pull on the other. My arms aren't doing this. This is my arms moving. Moving my hips and my torso naturally moves one shoulder forward, which pushes this arm forward. Naturally pulls this one back because the shoulder goes back. Okay. But I'm anchored onto him and it still gets created. What they end up doing is walking past the person, disengaging their shoulder, and then applying force to create the throw on the other side. That's all going to be great as long as he's your size or smaller. Okay. Or he's just being an uke and sacrificing his body to the cause. The reason that most people's stuff fail under pressure is because they're not properly applying tension when tension is needed, not overexertion. Just lock, lock, lock. Use the body to move this. So how much is enough? Enough is that pushes him, but it doesn't collapse. This one pulls him, but it doesn't fall away, right? We're looking to cause him to collapse. We shouldn't be collapsing. So too much, I'm going to have a hard time under pressure, relaxing to move to the next position. Too little and shit folds and I end up moving, but he doesn't. For instance, in this Kumyuch position, if I'm in motion, the body parts that I'm touching on him should be in motion. If I'm moving and he's not moving, he's either catching his balance or he's killing me. All right? So there are litmus tests all through this. All right? So for the underexerting student, they need to be helped to understand that relaxation should never mean passivity. Too soft is as ineffective as too hard. All right? So we apply the same principles in life. Conserve energy by focusing only on what truly matters, cutting out wasteful effort, and balancing responsibility with recovery. Right? For the student who feels overwhelmed by life, they need to be helped to realize that progress isn't about catching up, but about moving forward efficiently. Right? Small, sustainable steps lead to mastery. All right. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. Right? So the path to mastery here is balance between these two supposed extremes, right? So true mastery lies in understanding when to exert force, when to yield. Right? It's not just a combat lesson, it's a life principle. Right? Energy conservation is not just about fighting. Right? It's about long-term sustainability in training, in work, family, personal growth. Right? How long can you keep the battery working? Well, battery has to go on the recharger occasionally, right? And I know when I use the word battery, way too many Western people have to stretch their brain to remember rechargeables, okay? Because we're fixed on when the batteries run out, we just pull them out of the toy or whatever the device is, throw them away, and replace them with new ones. Great. Except that those new ones came from a freaking factory where they did all the work. Okay? We're the battery and the user and the device. So there is no replacing the batteries. You burn out the batteries, well, then you're screwed. Okay? So we have to remember, keep track of the percentage, get them on a charger, but the device can't be on the charger at the peak time when I need to use it. Right? So, right? By finding this balance, right, we can train smarter, we can live more effectively, right? And we can avoid burnout, both in the dojo and in everyday life. Sorry, right? This is just the truth that a lot of people who have taken time off at whatever point in their life, one of two things happened. Okay, one of three things happened. Okay? They lost interest. Right? They couldn't see beyond the lesson, so redundancy created boredom, or the teacher didn't know how to disguise repetition, right? Or they got distracted. Okay, underwater basket weaving seemed to be more important than, or the new squeeze that they kind of huddled up against, or whatever, right? They got distracted, right? Or they got burned out. Right? Just taking some time off, since I got to get some other things together, whatever. Okay, so okay, right? But either they got burned out, and that distraction was a welcome relief, right? Or that was a distraction, right? It's a temporary distraction, and they got caught up in other things and got pulled away from this. Okay? Either way, right? But there's a lot there. Okay. Quick cautionary reminder: we keep coming back to this concept of relaxation. Okay. And while some students can find it difficult to know or to feel when they're too tense, okay, it's difficult to find out without a reminder, like my broken hand, that you're too relaxed. Okay. Things start literally and figuratively breaking. Like we slow down, relationships suffer, all of a sudden results drop off, and yes, something on you literally breaks. Right? So just gonna kind of lean into that, right? So we spent this episode dissecting how wasted energy, whether physical, mental, or emotional, can be the difference between survival and failure. Right? And by now, you should see that the fight isn't just about movement or technique. It's about efficiency. It's about awareness. It's about knowing where you're bleeding time and effort before it's too late. Right? But here's the real question. What happens when the moment arrives and you have to act? Not in theory, not in the dojo, but when everything's on the line. Right? So next week, we're actually going to go deeper in that direction, right? Not just into energy conservation, but into what happens when you reach the breaking point, right? When hesitation and limitation collide with reality, right? We're going to take a hard look at the things you think you have time to fix, the skills you assume you'll be able to access when you need them, right? And what actually happens when you cannot do what you cannot do when you must be able to do them. Got a quote from Huntsman Sensei again that will lead over in that direction. Okay? Because in the end, the outcome isn't decided by what you meant to do. It's decided by whether or not you did them, right? Whether or not you can act when hesitation is fatal and failure is permanent. Okay. So hopefully you'll be on for next week's for that. But that's what I have for this one. So let's go ahead and open things up for questions, comments, whatever. What do we got, James? Anything from anybody?
A little bit ago, Mel Purdy said hi. Trinity jumped
Oh, hey,
in,
Mel. Awesome.
said hello.
Awesome.
And
You mean Trinity like my daughter Trinity, or like Trinity from the Matrix? I know she thinks she is. I want to see her do the dive through the window on the roll, and Anyway,
and Meryl said, absolutely brilliant the way you explained this.
oh, thanks. I have my moments. I save them for you guys. Awesome.
And that's it as of right now.
Cool. All right. Well, then let's do this. Let's go ahead and wrap it up. There is a series of emails that are going out. So if you're on the email list, one went out a day or two ago. One just went out today. I'm letting everybody know when these camps are and stuff. Everything is set up for an early enrollment into the spring camp, which is coming up May 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Is that right, James? Yeah, 2nd to the 4th. And what I decided to do, just for anybody who wanted to jump on early, was to cut the tuition or the cost for that in half, which is what my inner circle and my really close students pay for that. And that's virtual or online. So if you didn't get the email, you can still jump on it as well. You can go to onlineninjaacademy.com/spring -camp, right? So it's still spring camp. Just put a hyphen or a dash or a minus sign. Don't do the underscore, right? And then, well, I guess you're going to need the coupon code, right? Because otherwise it won't cut it in half, right? Crap. Let's see. See, that's what happens when I got all creative and stuff. James, do you know what it is? Is it? Never mind. I got it. I think I got it. Shinoku? No. I had to pull a different. I was going to use a specific word, but it wasn't close enough for me, and my OCD got in the way, and so I had to pull out one that was more correct and more cool sounding and all that. Anyway, so let's see. Sent. Yeah, second one went today. Well, this I'm only running it until Wednesday at midnight Eastern time. Okay, and after that, there's a tiered system, so there'll be less of a discount after that, and then early to mid March. I'm sorry, early to mid April. Things will go. So the coupon code, if you want the half off, is Shunsoku 50. So SHUNSOKU, Shunsoku. It means to do something really fast, like fast action. Okay. And then 50 is for the 50% off. Okay. So there's a little coupon code kind of thing there, but I'll lock that thing in there, save about $150, give or take. If you're doing the paid in full, it takes the 50% off of whatever it is you do. If you do the 3-pay option, a lot of people, you have to have it all paid off within a certain amount of time or whatever. It'll break it up into 30-day kind of things, and it will take the 50% off of each one. Just know there's a little bit added onto the 3-pay option because every time there's a charge, the bank hits me with all kinds of extra fees. So I have to recoup those somehow. I'm nice, but not that nice. It's kind of like that return on investment thing. I can't be backing up. Okay. So again, onlineninjaacademy.com/spring-camp. And then just until Wednesday at midnight, right? So you got about 48 hours at this point, give or take. And then Shunsoku 50 is your discount code to save 50%. Or I said 50%. I know I can speak very, very quickly. I did not say 50 cent. Okay. So neither a rapper nor saving 50 cent. Shit. Spend that much energy. Just open up the device. Anyway, anything else, James?
No, sir.
All right. In that case, guys, that wraps up another one. I will talk to everybody again, hopefully on Whiteboard Wednesday. Again, doing the energy conservation thing, but wrapped around principles and concepts for actual combat. All right. So if I don't see you then, I'll see you next week on KUDEN. Get more of KUDEN Radio. Subscribe through your favorite podcasting site or join our clan of serious modern warriors at online